Welcome everybody to SJG Perspective. If you haven't yet, please go subscribe to sjgperspective.com. You can like this video if you want to. It doesn't do me much. I don't really care though at this point. I just want to bring as many people over to sjgperspective.com. There it is, popped up on the screen. Sub up to that right there. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about today, I should probably take that zero hedge dealio off because I haven't updated it for a while, is antibody-dependent enhancement, ADE. COVID-19 vaccines increase the risk of a severe disease that people should be made aware of. This done by a study out of the National Library of Medicine, right? It was done by Timothy Cardoza. And we're going to jump into that right now and kind of explain briefly what that means. This information is so important for us to understand when it comes to everything that is going on regarding the rollout of the vaccine. I think it makes the most sense to read scientific articles, to read verified and legitimate articles. We got to be careful about our misinformation on this. I totally agree with that. But a lot of the mainstream narrative is feeding some incomplete and or misinformation. So it's important to get the full picture. So I'm going to read a scientific-based study that was done. And I'm not saying one way or another what you should think or shouldn't think, but I feel it's very important for us all to be informed. With that said, why don't we jump into it? This study it says COVID-19 vaccine increased the risk of more severe diseases that people should be made aware of. Results of a study published in the International Journal of Clinical Practice found that there is enough literature available to determine that the COVID-19 vaccine increases the risk of more severe diseases, and that recipients should be made aware of all the risks before being vaccinated. We're not saying don't be vaccinated, but what we are saying is that you should definitely be made aware of these things. You should be able to have the full picture, and it's weird that they're not pushing the full picture or disclosing it like I'm gonna discuss here and show you. Okay. The scientists concluded that the vaccines may worsen COVID-19 disease via antibody-dependent enhancement, ADE, and that the risks are kept secret in clinical trial protocols and consent forms. Consent forms for you to have proper consent, right? To have full consent when you are taking whatever medication. It goes against the ethical practice of medical ethicalness to not explain the full picture to everyone before they get a procedure or take a medication. That's why when you see these pharmaceutical ads roll out, they tell you everything that it possibly could cause. It could cause anal bleeding. It could cause, rectal cramping, so on and so forth. It's simply because they have to make sure they lay everything out to let you know the possibilities of what could happen. But with this, they don't tell you some things when it comes to the vaccine, and it's suspicious a little bit. It's odd. Maybe suspicious is the wrong word. Sorry, YouTube. It's odd. American scientists conducted a study to determine if sufficient literature exists to require clinicians to disclose the specific risks that COVID-19 vaccines could worsen disease upon exposure to challenge or circulating viruses. The study came right here. We'll read the quick study and then we'll go back and finish the article. Aims of the study: patient comprehension is a critical part of meeting medical ethics standards of informed consent in study designs. The aim of the study was determined if sufficient literature exists to require clinicians to disclose specific risks that COVID-19 vaccines could worsen disease upon exposure to challenge or circulating viruses. This was done, or this study was posted it's on pubmed.gov. So totally legitimate source, was done by Timothy Cardoza, which we'll get into his credentials. And again, it's informed consent disclosure to vaccine trial subjects of risk of COVID-19 vaccine worsening clinical disease. Methods used to conduct the study: Published literature was reviewed to identify preclinical and clinical evidence that COVID-19 vaccines could worsen disease upon exposure to challenge or circulating virus. Clinical trial protocols for COVID-19 vaccines were reviewed to determine if risks were properly disclosed. Results of the study. COVID-19 vaccines designed to elicit neutralizing antibodies may sensitize vaccine recipients to more severe disease than if they were not vaccinated. Vaccines for SARS, MERS, and RSV have never been approved, and the data generated in the development and testing of these vaccines suggest a serious mechanistic concern. The vaccines designed empirically using the traditional approach, consisting of unmodified or minimally modified coronaviral spike to elicit neutralizing antibodies. It says, be they composed of proteins, viral vector, DNA, or RNA, and irrespective of delivery method, may worsen COVID-19 disease via antibody-dependent enhancement, ADE. This risk is sufficiently observed in clinical trial protocols and consent forms for ongoing COVID-19 vaccine trials that adequate patient comprehension of this risk is unlikely to occur, obviating truly informed consent by subjects in these trials. So, clouding truly making sure everyone understands the possibilities that if you get this vaccine, it could actually cause some pathogenic priming, and what you could end up having is you could get an antibody-dependent enhancement, which is bad, really bad. Conclusions drawn from the study and clinical implications. The specific and significant COVID-19 risk of ADE should have been and should be prominently and independently disclosed to research subjects. Notice that, to research subjects currently in vaccine trials, as well as those being recruited for the trials and future patients after vaccine approval, in order to meet the medical ethics standard of patient comprehension for informed consent. Now, this was done back in October, right? Let me see here, October 28th, back before they had completely, a couple months before they had completely approved these. Yet still today, those consents are not being made clear, or you're not getting informed consent, because the fact that antibody-dependent enhancement, or ADE, is not being fully disclosed as it should be to vaccine recipients. The study was undertaken by Timothy Cardoza of the Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Pharmacology, New York University, Langan Health, New York, and Ronald Vezzi of Divisions of Comparative Pathology, Department of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine, Tulane University School of Medicine, and Tulane National Primate Research Center, Covington, Louisiana. Almost said Los Angeles, but it's Louisiana. The scientists reviewed published literature to identify preclinical and clinical evidence. Clinical trial protocols for COVID-19 vaccines were also reviewed to determine if risks were properly disclosed, and they weren't. The results of the study were published in the International Journal of Clinical Practice. The study concluded that people given COVID-19 vaccines are at a higher risk of getting more severe diseases than those who were not vaccinated. The study further concludes that this fact is kept secret in clinical trial protocols and consent forms. Why would they do that? You need to ask yourself a question of why wouldn't they give you proper informed consent on these things? Just asking questions here. COVID-19 vaccines designed to elicit neutralizing antibodies may sensitize vaccine recipients to more severe disease than if they were not vaccinated. I read all of this in the previous report or study, so I'm not going to read all that. The scientists recommend that these risks of ADE should be disclosed to those being vaccinated. People, there is a definite need for you, if you're considering the vaccine that I know Donald Trump thinks are beautiful and wonderful and fantastic, that I know he used to warp speed into all of us, right, to get those across the finish line as quick as possible. You need to not trust anyone but your own mind and your own research when it comes to doing these, right? I am not pushing vaccine hesitancy. I am simply saying make sure that you are very well informed. You have full informed consent before you inject something that has been up until this point a complete and total experimental type vaccine. mRNA vaccines have never up until this point been injected into human beings and put into circulation, if you will. So make sure that you are informed about what you are doing. And if you decide after looking at all the literature, right, then you decide you want to do it, then you go right ahead and do it. Keep in mind that when they were doing these studies, you've been seeing a lot of anaphylactic shock or anaphylactic allergic reactions. One of the things I was going to point out in here is that they made sure that when the people that were in the test pool that were the participants in the trial run, they made sure that they picked only people who had never ever had an allergic reaction to anything. So that's why we've seen some allergic reactions that have been pretty bad and scary to some of these people. It just goes to the further point that you really need to research how these trials were done, how many people were actually given the vaccine, and what kind of things are they leaving out when it comes to the informed consent. That's the only purpose of what I want to make sure is clear to you. All right. I'll be definitely streaming on Wednesday on Inauguration Day, D-Day. We'll see how that all goes. And until next time, I think that's about it. But make sure that you guys subscribe to SJG Perspective. You can follow me on all the other sites there. And they are clamping down hard right now on censorship and on taking channels down. So if you want to stay in touch with me, please subscribe to SJG Perspective, and keep your head up, because it's gonna get pretty sketchy, I think, for a while. But we will make it through. Truth wins out in the end, and freedom wins out in the end. So it may be a long ride, but stick with it, and keep your head up, and take care of your family. Until next time, it's SAG Perspective. You guys have a wonderful night, and we will talk with you, or day, whenever you're watching this. Without fear or animus, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.